What's the first thing women notice about an older man? It's not the watch, not the car, not even the gray hair. If you think it's money, you're missing the real currency of attraction, wisdom. And today, we're breaking down the qualities older men carry that instantly stand out. Qualities rooted in composure, clarity, and self-respect. Welcome to Silent Stoic, the channel where modern life meets ancient wisdom. Today's video reveals 8 rules women instantly notice about older men and why these traits have nothing to do with money, status, or appearance, and everything to do with self-respect, presence, and stoic discipline. As men grow older, something shifts, not just in how they look, but in how they think, move, speak, and carry themselves. Women pick up on these signals instantly, often before the man even says a word. If you've ever wondered why older men with calm energy and quiet confidence stand out without trying, this video will break it down, step by step, through the lens of Stoic philosophy. These are not tricks, not psychological games, just timeless principles that shape a man's presence and make him unforgettable at any age. So sit back, breathe deeply, and let's dive into the 8 rules that define the older men women notice most. Let's begin. 1. His emotional stability. Women instantly. Women notice something in older men long before they notice the gray hair or the years on their face. They notice the calm, the quiet steadiness, the unshakable presence that doesn't flinch under pressure. While younger men often react fast, speak fast, and break fast, the older man has learned a different language, the language of composure. He doesn't raise his voice just because the world raises its chaos. He doesn't let small problems drag him into emotional storms. He has lived long enough to understand a simple truth. What you control is small, but how you respond is everything. Stoicism teaches that a man who controls his reactions controls his life. Not because he's emotionless, but because he refuses to be ruled by every feeling that passes through him. He doesn't explode out of anger, panic out of fear, or collapse under pressure. He pauses. He breathes. He responds with intention instead of impulse. And this is the first thing women notice, even subconsciously, because calmness is rare. Composure is rare. A man who can stay centered when others fall apart is unforgettable. While a younger man may get frustrated over a delay, a disagreement, or a minor setback, the older man simply observes. He's been here before. He survived worse. He doesn't see problems. He sees situations. Situations he can manage step by step without losing himself. And that difference is powerful. Composure is not silence. It's not pretending to be strong. It's the confidence of someone who has faced real life, real pain, real failures, and learned to rise above them rather than react to them. This calm presence sends a message without saying a single word. I know who I am. I don't need chaos to feel alive. Women instantly recognize this, not because they're looking for perfection, but because calmness signals something deeper: stability, wisdom, and self-mastery. A man who can calm himself can calm a room. A man who can lead himself can lead his life. And a man who doesn't crumble under pressure becomes someone others naturally trust. Composure is the silent strength that separates men who are still fighting themselves from men who have mastered themselves. And that is why an older man's calmness is not just attractive. It's powerful. It's respected. It's noticed immediately. 2. His presence not his appearance. There's something powerful about an older man who walks into a room with quiet confidence. Not loud, not demanding attention, just intentional, steady, grounded. You notice him before he says a single word, and yet you're not even sure why. He isn't trying to impress anyone. He isn't trying to prove anything. He simply carries himself like a man who knows who he is, and that alone separates him from the noise around him. Because presence isn't about height, muscles, or expensive clothes. Presence is about energy. It's about the calm certainty that comes from years of lessons, challenges, wins, and losses. It's the kind of presence that says, without speaking, "I have been through enough life to trust my steps." Younger men often try to force attention. Louder jokes, harder stares, bigger movements. But an older man doesn't need that. He's learned that real confidence is quiet, real strength doesn't announce itself, and real identity doesn't require approval. He walks with intention, not rushing, not dragging. Every step communicates self-respect. You can tell he values himself by the way he moves through the world. Calm, deliberate, aware. It's not arrogance. It's not dominance. It's certainty, the kind that only comes from knowing your worth without needing validation. Women notice this instantly, not because he's older, but because intention is rare in a world full of people who are lost in distraction, insecurity, and noise. This kind of presence feels different. It feels stable. It feels grounded. It feels like someone who is in control of his internal world, not someone reacting to every emotion or every opinion around him. Stoicism teaches that a man's presence is the result of his inner order. A man who has mastered his thoughts, his emotions, and his habits naturally carries himself with dignity. He becomes a man who doesn't chase attention, because he understands that meaningful attention comes to those who earn it through character, not performance. And here's the truth. Presence is felt. Long before it's seen. You feel the discipline. You feel the calmness. You feel the self-respect. It creates an atmosphere, a gravity around him. This is why an older man who walks with intention stands out without even trying. He's not competing. He's simply being himself, fully, unapologetically, quietly, and that quiet power is unforgettable. 3. His way of listening. There is something quietly powerful about a man who truly listens. Not the kind of listening where he waits for his turn to talk. Not the type where he's preparing a comeback in his head. But the rare, calm, focused listening that makes a woman feel seen instead of scanned. Women instantly notice this difference. Because in a world where everyone wants to speak, very few want to understand. A younger man often listens with one ear and his ego. He interrupts, corrects, competes, trying to prove he's right, trying to prove he's smart, trying to prove he matters. But an older man, he has nothing to prove. He has learned that attention is far more attractive than performance. A Stoic knows that the strongest presence in the room isn't the loudest voice. It's the mind that listens with intention. When an older man listens, he does it with stillness. He looks at you, not through you. He gives space, not pressure. He receives your words without judgment, without rushing you, without trying to solve you. And this is rare, rare enough that it becomes unforgettable. Because real listening is a form of respect, a form of maturity, a form of emotional stability that makes others feel safe to be themselves. Women notice the man who doesn't cut them off mid-sentence, doesn't turn every story into a competition, doesn't need to win the conversation, doesn't hijack their feelings with his own. They notice the man who can sit in silence for a moment and let thoughts breathe. That's not weakness, that's discipline, the exact discipline Stoicism is built upon. A man who truly listens reveals something powerful. He is not controlled by his ego. He can hold space. He can pay attention. He can value another person's experience without trying to overshadow it. And that level of self-control is emotional wealth. Calm, focused listening communicates depth. It shows wisdom. It shows presence. It shows that he understands something most men never learn. People don't want perfect answers. They want to feel understood. When a woman feels heard, truly heard, everything shifts, not because he said the right words, but because he created the right atmosphere. You don't need charm for that. You don't need youth for that. You don't need money for that. You just need discipline, patience, and the courage to let your ego step aside. And that's why a man who listens with calm intention stands out in a world full of noise. It's rare, it's powerful, it's unforgettable. 4. His discipline in daily life. Let's talk about the quiet language of a man who has his life together. It's never in the loud boasts or the grand declarations. You see it in the silent spaces, in the way he carries himself when no one's watching, in the non-negotiables he upholds even when he's tired, even when it's hard. Look at his posture. It's not just about standing straight. It's a physical manifesto. It says, I occupy this space. I am present here. That's discipline. It's the mind governing the body, refusing to slump under the weight of the day. It's a daily, minute-by-minute commitment to self-respect. Observe his routine. Not the perfect, Instagram-ready highlight reel, but the humble, gritty architecture of his ordinary days. What time does he wrestle himself out of bed? What does he do with that first sacred hour? Does he feed his mind, or does he scroll into a void? Does he move his body, or does he hit snooze on his potential? His routine is the blueprint. It's where discipline lays its bricks, one after the other, building a fortress for his focus and his peace. A man who is loyal to his morning is a man who cannot be betrayed by his day. And his time? Watch how he guards it. He doesn't give his hours away like loose change. He invests them like currency. He knows the meeting with himself is the most important one on the calendar. He understands that yes to everything is a no to what truly matters. This isn't about being busy. It's about being strategic. It's the discipline of discernment. It's choosing the deep work over the shallow distraction, the meaningful connection over the endless crowd. This is the core of it all. A man who respects his habits is secretly signaling that he respects his life. He's in a committed relationship with his own future. Every disciplined choice is a love letter to the man he is becoming. He's telling himself and the world that he is worth the effort, that his goals are worth the grind, that his peace is worth protecting. He doesn't chase motivation, that fleeting, fickle flame. He builds discipline, the steady, enduring engine, because motivation is what you feel on day 1. Discipline is what you lean on by day 100, when the feeling has long faded, and all that's left is the choice. And he chooses, again and again, the action that aligns with his purpose. This is the real magnetism. It's not about being perfect. It's about being committed. It's the integrity in the tiny things, the made bed, the finished project, the kept promise to himself. It builds a compounded interest of character. People feel it. They trust it. They see a man who can govern himself and think he can be relied upon. Because if he can command his own mornings, his own habits, his own time, he becomes a man of immense quiet power. He becomes quite simply, the rock, for himself and for those lucky enough to be in his orbit. That's the signal. That's the silent, screaming proof of a life being built with intention, not left to chance. It's the most attractive thing there is. 5. His emotional responsibility. Let's talk about a certain kind of man. You don't find him yelling into the void. You won't see him on a stage of his own making, casting himself as the eternal victim in the drama of his life. This is the man who has weathered a few storms, and in that weathering, something in him has settled. A deep, quiet strength. The kind that comes not from avoiding the fall, but from learning how to get back up. Alone. These men, the ones who have grown through real experience, they operate differently. Their default setting isn't blame. They've learned that pointing a finger is just a way of handing your power to someone else. They don't traffic in complaint, because they know complaining is just a prayer to a God that isn't listening. And drama? They see it for what it is, a cheap anesthetic for a life unlived. They've outgrown the need for the soundtrack, the violins of self-pity, the cymbals of outrage. They stand in a kind of profound silence where their character speaks for itself. And let me tell you something. Women notice this. Not in a loud, obvious way, but in the deepest, most instinctual part of them. They notice the man who carries his own weight. Not with a grunt, not with a show of strain, but with a simple, unshakable competence. He handles his business. He manages his emotions. He meets his responsibilities. He is, quite simply, a functioning, integrated adult. And he does it without asking for applause. That's the key. He doesn't need a standing ovation for doing what a man is supposed to do. He doesn't need a parade for paying his bills, for keeping his word, for showing up when it matters. The reward is in the integrity itself. The reward is a quiet mind and a life that isn't built on the validation of others. This is what true security looks like. It's not a loud, puffed-up chest. It's a calm, steady gaze. It's the absence of neediness. When a man has made peace with himself, with his past, his flaws, his journey, he stops demanding that the world fix him, notice him, or save him. A woman sees this, and something in her breathes. She can relax. She sees a harbor, not another storm. She sees a partner, not a project. He is not looking for a nurse, a cheerleader, or a mommy. He is looking for a companion. And that is the most powerful, magnetic signal a man can send. It says, "My life is not a problem you need to solve. I am not an emotional black hole you need to fill. I am whole, and from this place of wholeness, I have something real to offer." This is the quiet revolution, not in what he says, but in what he no longer needs to say. It's in the weight he carries effortlessly, and in the peace he creates simply by being a man who has done his work. 6. His standards and boundaries. A Stoic man knows what he will accept, and what he won't. Not because he's stubborn, not because he wants control, but because life has taught him a truth most men learn too late. Your boundaries are your dignity. Women notice this immediately, even before they understand why. They notice the man who doesn't tolerate disrespect, the man who doesn't stretch himself thin to please everyone, the man who doesn't apologize for having standards, not because he's harsh, but because he respects himself enough to protect his peace. There is a quiet strength in a man who can say no without guilt, enough without anger, and "this is where I stand," without raising his voice. Younger men often bend themselves into shapes just to be liked. They overgive, they over-explain, they overcommit, and slowly They lose themselves trying to keep others comfortable. But an older man, especially a Stoic, has lived long enough to understand that every time you let someone cross a boundary, you teach them how to treat you. And every time you choose peace over people-pleasing, you become a stronger version of yourself. Boundaries are not walls. They are not weapons. They are lines of clarity that say, I value myself. I value my time. I value my energy. Women don't notice boundaries as control. They notice them as maturity. They notice the man who doesn't chase chaos, the man who doesn't stay in situations that drain him, the man who refuses to negotiate his self-worth. There's something deeply attractive about a man who knows his limits without announcing them. He doesn't need to argue. He doesn't need to dominate. He doesn't need to demand respect, because he gives it to himself first. A Stoic man's boundaries create an atmosphere, calm, steady, grounded. People feel it. People adjust to it. People respect it. And here's the paradox. The quieter his boundaries are, the louder his self-respect becomes. This kind of man doesn't ask for permission to live by his principles. He simply lives them. And that consistency, that inner order, that quiet firmness, is something women instantly recognize as strength, not force, not control, just a man who knows who he is and refuses to betray himself for approval. In a world full of men who abandon their values to feel accepted, a man with firm, calm boundaries becomes unforgettable. 7. His thoughtful communication. An older man doesn't speak to impress. He's been alive long enough to understand that empty words are cheap and loud words are usually hiding insecurity. So he doesn't waste breath trying to sound brilliant or trying to win a moment with clever lines. He speaks with clarity because he's not confused about who he is. He speaks with intention because he knows the weight that words can carry. And he speaks with meaning because he's learned that everything spoken without purpose eventually becomes noise. This is why women notice him. Not because he talks a lot, but because he talks right. Where younger men rush to fill silence, an older man knows silence is not the enemy. He doesn't fear pauses. He doesn't ramble. He doesn't use words as decoration. He uses them as tools, tools for truth, for understanding, for connection. A Stoic man speaks the way he lives, deliberately, calmly, and with a sense of inner order. Every sentence has structure. Every word has intention. Nothing is thrown around carelessly. Women pick up on this instantly. They notice the man who chooses his words carefully, not because he's calculating, but because he respects the power of language. A careless man speaks to impress the moment. A wise man speaks to build something lasting. When an older man talks, he's not trying to dominate the conversation. He's not trying to outshine anyone. He's simply sharing what he knows, with honesty instead of ego, with depth instead of performance. And that calm confidence shows a lifetime of lessons sharpened into understanding. He doesn't gossip, because he's seen how small minds destroy themselves. He doesn't exaggerate, because truth is stronger than drama. He doesn't fake intelligence, because real wisdom needs no decoration. He speaks with the steadiness of someone who has been tested. He speaks with the simplicity of someone who no longer needs to pretend. He speaks with the clarity of a man who knows that the right words can reveal character more than any achievement. Women notice this, not because he's older, but because wisdom itself is attractive. A man who controls his words shows he controls his mind. A man who controls his mind shows he controls his life. In a world full of noise, a man who speaks with intention becomes unforgettable. 8. His self-care and personal order. It's not luxury. It's not fashion. It's not designer labels or expensive trends. What women truly notice first is something far simpler and far more telling. Cleanliness, grooming, posture. A man who maintains himself, not for attention, not for approval, but because he respects himself enough to stay organized, healthy, and centered. There's a quiet power in a man who looks put together without trying too hard. A freshly ironed shirt, clean shoes, a trimmed beard, a posture that doesn't slouch under life, but stands with intention. None of this requires money. None of it requires youth. It only requires self-respect. The kind that says, I treat myself well because I value who I am becoming. Women instantly pick up on this. They notice the man who pays attention to the details of his life, the man who keeps his appearance in order because he keeps his mind in order, the man who doesn't let himself fall apart, even when life becomes heavy. Because grooming is not vanity. It's discipline. It's a reflection of internal structure. It's proof that he has standards, even when no one is watching. A man who takes care of himself physically often takes care of his responsibilities emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. The outside reflects the inside more than people like to admit. And posture. That alone speaks volumes. A straight back communicates strength. A lifted chin signals confidence. A steady presence shows he is grounded, not drifting. These small details form a silent language, and women read that language instantly, not because they're judging looks, but because these signals reveal something deeper. He is intentional with his life. He is present in his body. He respects himself, and self-respect is always attractive. Not loud, not dramatic, quiet, steady, clear. A man who maintains himself doesn't need to chase validation. He becomes the kind of man people naturally respect, because he respects himself first. These were the 8 rules women instantly notice about older men, the qualities that reveal wisdom, self-control, and inner strength long before age ever does. Remember, becoming this kind of man isn't about acting older. It's about becoming more grounded, more intentional, and more in command of your life. If any of these rules spoke to you or reminded you of the man you're becoming, let me know in the comments which one hit you the hardest. And if you found value in this message, hit the like button, subscribe to Silent Stoic, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new lesson in self-mastery, discipline, and Stoic wisdom. Thank you for watching. Stay grounded, stay disciplined, stay stoic. See you in the next video.